Welcome back. Today, we're going to talk about the scientific revolution, some of the things that were going on before the scientific revolution, what happened after. We're going to look at some people, what they came up with, and how it affects us today. Now, before we get started, what I would suggest you do for today's notes, instead of writing this way, turn your notebooks horizontally and then take notes like this. As you're going to see from the way we take notes today, it's going to make things a lot easier. It's going to give you a lot more space. Also, I'm going to use different colors. It's going to help. If you have different colors, it helps organizing your thoughts so that you can see this color goes with this color goes with that. You don't have to, completely up to you. It's just what I do to help organize my thoughts. Now, first thing we're going to do is title our notes as Scientific Revolution. All right, now, so that's the first thing we're going to do. We're going to title our notes. We're going to talk about the scientific revolution. Now, what we're going to look at is the old school way of thinking first. So we're going to go old school. All right, and this is the way that it was taught and understood from the Middle Ages on. Middle Ages up until the scientific revolution. And learning and education was controlled by the Catholic Church. Now, we've discussed in our previous videos that the Catholic Church is starting to become more worldly and starting to extend their arms and their reach outside of religion. And so the Catholic Church controlling and running education is another example of that. And one of the major things that changes during the scientific revolution from the old school Catholic way of thought is what's known as the geocentric model. Geo meaning earth, centric meaning center. And so you can put that together, and it's the idea that the earth was at the center of the universe. And so essentially what they thought was earth is right here. And then the first orbit around the earth was the moon. And then you had a couple planets that rotated around that. And then you had the sun. Woo! And the sun revolved around the earth. And it continued out until all the planets were included in this model. And of course, they had perfectly drawn circles, which is something that I've never been able to do. But what happens is that over time, all right, so you take a little clock. That's what I use to represent time. Right? Over time. All right, so as time continues, you see some changes. Changes happen over time. And some of those changes are exploration, so exploration emerges. You got people drawing maps. They're looking at the skies as well. During the Renaissance, ancient texts from Greece, Rome, your ancient Islamic empires who were very big in astrology and astronomy, those texts get translated. And so you learn more from that. And then, as always, over time, technology improves. So technology starts to improve, making it easier to study and look at these things. And so what happens is that you have a series of thinkers that emerge. All right, and the first one we're going to look at is a man who is forced to work in secret. He can't tell nobody because he's afraid that he's going to go to prison and jail. And this man's name is Copernicus. Copernicus. And Copernicus, like I said, worked in secret. And while he's working and researching and doing all of this, he designs the heliocentric idea. Helio meaning sun, centric meaning center, which we already discussed. And this idea is exactly what the opposite of the geocentric theory. He believes that the sun was at the center of the universe, and the planets revolve around the sun. But he also found out that all the planets are revolving around the sun, and the moon revolves around Earth, not around the sun. So the moon has its own orbit around Earth. But Earth, like all the other planets, revolves around the sun. And he has to work and do this in secret because he was afraid of persecution and being thrown in jail. And so he continues his work, and another scientist emerges during the scientific revolution, and that is Mr. Johann Kepler. And Kepler expands on this heliocentric idea. And he uses math to prove his scientific ideas. And this math proves that the orbits are not in a circle, but in fact, they are ovals. And that the closer they got to the sun, the faster they moved, and the further away from the sun they were, the slower they moved. And so it comes up with this idea that they're not circles, they orbit in oval shapes, but still proving this heliocentric model that the sun was at the center. And then the next man we're going to look at is a man that is wanted. He is wanted. He's eventually captured, put on trial, and arrested. And that is Galileo. Galileo is wanted because Galileo is our next person that we're going to talk about. He builds a telescope. All right, he builds this telescope, And using this telescope, and he builds lots of other things. He also builds the clock and the water thermometer, and he's brilliant mind, creates lots of things. But the big one he creates is the telescope. And this telescope finds that there are mountains on the moon, but it also proves the heliocentric theory. Now, it proves the heliocentric theory, which goes against the teachings of the Catholic Church, which is why he is ultimately arrested, tried, and put on house arrest. But he is so sure that he is right, and he refuses to recant his statements and remains on house arrest for the remainder of his life. He continues his teachings there. He disperses the knowledge to the few people who are allowed to see him on house arrest, who continue his teachings otherwise. And then the next scientist that emerges out of the scientific revolution is Mr. Francis Bacon. And Francis Bacon emerges during the scientific revolution because he comes up with the scientific method. And Bacon encourages people not to believe or trust anything that has not been tested. And he comes up with the scientific method to test things. And so it's a multi-step process that begins with step one. What is the purpose of the experiment? Step one, what is the purpose of the experiment? Why are we doing this? What problem are we looking to solve? Step two, what's the research? You research it. Research it. Find either the inconsistencies or what people believe or what is already thought about it, which will bring you to step three. Your hypothesis. And you come up with an idea or what you believe and what you're trying to prove through your research or through your experiment. And so that's your hypothesis. Step four I mentioned, that's your experiment. All right, so however you believe it is going, wow, I can't spell. You conduct your experiment, record your findings. Once you have all your findings and your records and you've gone through the entire experiment, you're going to analyze the data. So you conduct analysis. What does the data tell you? What did the experiment show you? What happened when you did A, B, and C? What were the results of that? And so after you analyze the data, number 6, you're going to form a conclusion. You're going to form a conclusion which will either prove that your hypothesis was correct or incorrect. And so it kind of all builds on itself. You find a problem, you research the belief on that problem, you form your own idea, come up with an experiment to prove or disprove your hypothesis, analyze the information in the data, come up with a conclusion. What does the data prove? Does the data prove that your hypothesis was correct or incorrect? Now, this is important because as we continue on through history, people start to take the scientific method and apply it to other things. They start applying it to life in general, not necessarily just science. And we start to find that maybe people are being lied to about some things. Now, what you are going to do, apparently I'm just going to make a huge mess. What you're going to do from this point forward is we're going to go back to the exploration piece. And I'm going to post a second video where I'm just going to walk around. And you are going to map my walk. And this is going to show how amazing it is that this exploration was able to take place and we were able to put together these maps that help during the scientific revolution, because we're just mapping based on what we see, especially then. And then, for extra credit, you can conduct an experiment of your choosing using the scientific method that we discussed. Show me that you did all 6 steps, and you can receive extra credit. As always, you can reach out to me if you have any problems, you need any sort of assistance, and you have a great day.